Well, it's hard to believe that we are about 10 days until May is ending. I always say it all the time, my favorite month of the year, National Foster Care Awareness Month. But as you all know, in my family, our organization, and at Fostering Change, every single month we honor and we lift up foster care because that's exactly what we should do. This has been a crazy month. I have literally been on the road, I want to say probably for about 15 days back and forth all over the country. May's always crazy. I do have a little frog in my throat, so if I cough, I apologize. But listen up, I'm so excited about my next guest. As as nonprofits, one of the things that we truly do rely on is for companies to truly step up and do their corporate responsibility. I remind people all the time, corporate responsibility is not what you sell, it's not what you give away, it's actually what you do to build the foundation of your community. And we have been so lucky for the last 8 years to have one of the most greatest partners we could ever ask for, and that is Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Let me tell you, I got to tell you a quick story before I invite my guest on, but it was 8 years ago actually when my video went viral on Upworthy. Right now we're about 150 million views, still the most shared video in Upworthy history. And there happened to be somebody at Anthem in Indiana who actually saw my video. And they reached out to me on Facebook, and their exact words were, I know probably everybody's reaching out to you, and you'll probably never read this, but I just had to reach out to you. And I picked up the phone and called the person's number immediately, and they were just shocked. Well, that just turned into one of the most amazing partnerships across 14 states where we have literally packed thousands, and I mean thousands and thousands of cases, provided thousands of Comfort XLs. And like I said, we could never have done this without this amazing partnership. But my next guest, she actually works for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Anthem. She's a case manager. I can't wait till she tells you what her whole title is because it was really big. But I can't wait to talk to her about the fact of the importance of why people should be supporting our social workers. And that is something, as you know, just last week I was in South Bend, Indiana. We were packing cases, and it constantly reminds me of the fact that, kids in foster care, they're not just responsible for the social workers, not the only one responsible for them. We all are responsible for them, all of us. And I think that this conversation is going to go great. So, Aimee, welcome to Fostering Change.
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning. It's so great to see you. It's so great to see you. I love seeing familiar faces. It's probably been a crazy busy month for you as well, being National Foster Care Awareness Month. But I want to dive right in because one of the things that I'm really, so interested about when it comes to our social workers, because, the statistic shows that a social worker only lasts for about 18 months. And I want to dive right into this and find out exactly my thing that I normally ask at the end of every interview, I want to ask in the beginning of this interview.
All
If there were
right.
two things that you could actually change in our foster care arena, what would those two things be?
Um, so if I could change two things in the foster care arena, would be essentially more education. I think that people don't truly realize the amount of children who are in foster care. I mean, not just in the state of Indiana, right? I mean, Indiana within itself is, I mean, my caseloads right now are sitting at 5,000. And so like it's a lot. And so when you look at the entire world, um, I don't think that people really understand the totality of the circumstances of what these children are facing and how many are facing it.
Yeah.
So when youth are experiencing foster care, it's not their choice. And
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we forget that. And so one thing for sure would be more education,
Yeah. I
whether
have to
that.
agree with you on that part because, as I travel and, speak to people all the time, first of all, number one, we need to change our vocabulary. These are not foster children. These are not foster kids. These are kids who are experiencing foster care because as soon as I say foster kid to someone, the first question that normally is asked to me in a group of people is, what did they do wrong? you
Right.
know, and at the end of the day, they're there not because they want to be there. By the way, I've never ever met a kid in foster care, and I've been doing this 13 years traveling the country, who says I wanted to be in foster care.
Mhm.
Even from the worst abuse. I'm a prime example. I grew up in the system. No matter how bad the abuse was in my family, I wanted to be with my family. And so
Right.
we realize that kids come into the system because of choices that other people made. And then we have this stereotype, this uneducated part where these are bad kids, these are troubled kids, these are kids who are a product of our communities where they really need to be outcast. And you and I both know that's not true.
Right. Well, and I think part of that education comes with, trauma-informed care and understanding that maybe the behavioral health needs that come with that are in a result of the trauma. They are not choosing to be defiant. And I think that sometimes that is what is assumed is that, well, they just want to act this way, or they're struggling in school because they're just not paying attention. But when you really look at the trauma that youth who are experiencing foster care um, undergo, I mean, there's always a reason. And
Yeah.
so we have to understand what that reason is of why they may be struggling, or they're not opening up, or they're getting bad grades in school, things like that. And so I think that's a big part of the education piece too, is just trauma informed care and how we can individualize things, because we can't have one thing that's going to suit all children that are experiencing foster care. They all
I
are their
agree.
own individual self.
Right.
So,
And the fact is that if you really look at the mainstream of children in general across our country, the trauma level for each and every one of us, whether we have experienced foster care or we have not experienced foster care, is really higher than we have ever seen. So trauma truly does cross the baselines where it's just not children who are experiencing foster care. And as a dad of five kids, all from the system, people would think, oh my gosh, your kids have everything. What? No, I have a son who has reactive attachment disorder. I mean, it's not easy. It's not, but I also have to look at the fact of the trauma that he went through as a little boy and the fact that, so many times these kids have been so let down and so disappointed. And when you start looking at, the statistics of how many homes that they've moved into, how many social workers they've gone through. I always say this, and I've gotten backlash from this, and so I probably will get some really great emails like I normally do. That I feel we as a society, we've already failed when a child enters the system. We've
oh
already
yeah.
failed.
Mhm.
And I
For sure.
believe that, we as a community, we have forgotten why communities were built. I mean,
Mhm.
truly, I mean, if you see your neighbor's lights not on for a week and not, but you see the kids are there and you're not asking questions, you're not coming over and just saying, hey, is there something I can help you with?
Right.
I mean, before we ever get involved with CPS, why can't we just be good humans and truly
Mhm.
care about our fellow neighbors? The thing is what's your second thing that you would change?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that because you brought something up that is part of my second thing. And so when you talk about social workers and then the inconsistency that's often in a youth who's experiencing foster care's life, the in and out, the turnover rate, the trust can't be built because of that. And so one thing that I would love to change, I think it might be something that would take a very, very long time, but would just be the consistency and the support and the teamwork around youth in foster care. And so I would love to know that everyone that's going to come in and be a family case manager, or to be a therapist or a caseworker of some other sort from another outside agency that are working with these youth in foster care, to be there and stay there. Like, like I know that's really far
But I think
out.
it could happen. I really do think it
Yes.
could happen. And I think one of the biggest things that could make that change faster is if that we first realize that we're all there for the child. First
Right.
realize that. And that means when a child enters the system, and I've said this all the time, all of us should come around the table. We should be bringing the birth parents. We should be bringing the foster parents. We should be bringing the social workers, the therapists, the CASAs, the guardian of light. Whoever is going to touch that file of that child needs to come around the table. And we all need to come around the table and say, now, what is the best thing for this child? How do
Mhm.
we make sure that we support this birth family? Because I am so into reunification. I
Right.
believe reunification, and I believe that children who are in kinship is what our key focus should be when it comes to our children. But the problem is, and I see this so often, I saw it with my children, all immediately the birth parents are bad. Nobody talks to anyone. Nobody asks the foster parents in the court system about what's going. I mean, and I feel like we're just so all scattered,
Right.
and that's when we see such, a disconnect for the child. But if we
Mhm.
all come together and say, listen, this isn't about you. This isn't about you. Yeah, 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 your kids, you had to be put into the system. But guess what? We're here to support you. I think that the beating up of the birth parents, I think the first thing that if we stop doing that and stop pinning each other against everybody, I think we could see the change that you say.
Right. And so, like, I've always thought it would be great if foster parents, foster families, their main focus wasn't just on the child, but on the family. And so there are times that I do talk to foster parents who are not relatives that have great relationships with birth parents, bio parents. And I love seeing that. And so
And
they're
that's the
going
way
to
it should
remain.
be.
Well, right. And when reunification does happen, that foster family has all intention to remain a support.
Yes.
Even though DCS is now removed, they're going to stay a support, and the more support, the better. But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, I agree. There is typically a divide, and it would be nice to see everyone come together.
Yeah, no, I
See,
agree. I agree 100% with you on that. I think that we do such a disservice by having a child come to a foster family, and they're with this family for 18 months, 2 years. All of a sudden reunification happens and that foster family gets cut off completely. And what
right.
should happen is in that 18 months or 2 years that the birth parent, I mean, I look at my kids. I mean, I have a son who's getting ready to graduate high school. I mean, the aunts and uncles are coming and cousins are coming, and because I always remind my children, you have a life story, and it
Right.
started before you came to your dad's. And so I think that we as foster parents, we need to have an open mind. And I think that birth parents also need to have an
Yes.
open mind because, they're beat up pretty bad in themselves. I mean, I was just speaking to a group of women in Topeka, Kansas. And these were women who are serving time. And the majority of those women have kids who are in the system. And the fact is you could see in their eyes, the regrets, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would, I say this all the time, Amy, and I think I'd love your opinion on this. We all fall. Each and every
Oh,
one
yeah.
of us fall. It's just whether or not we grab that rope to pick ourselves back up, and learn from that fall. But I think that that's the biggest thing is that we all have to realize each and every one of us fall, and we shouldn't be there to judge.
Right. Well, and it makes me think of times when times where, the DCS case closes, there's been reunification. If that foster family stays connected and those bio parents fall again, because we're not to say that it's not going to happen again. Like, especially when we're dealing with certain situations where sometimes things are just inevitable that they might just happen again. They have that foster family there as support, and if those kids have to unfortunately come back into foster care, they're still there. It's not like a new family is coming forward. Those connections stay, and then it helps alleviate some of the trauma and some of the, I just
No, I
yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
100% with you. You know, as we're rounding this conversation up, and what a great, amazing conversation to be ending our National Foster Care Awareness Month. You know, each and every one of us do something for a reason. You know, I tell people all the time, I don't have a job, I have a purpose. And the fact is that becoming a social worker, a case manager, working within, child and family services, really believe is one of the hardest jobs ever. One of the
Mhm.
hard, I mean, from the moment of having to remove a child to go through there's something within inside of you. And I want to know, Aimee, what was that for you to say, I want to be a social worker, but not only a social worker, I want to deal with the adolescents who truly need the biggest support, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Right. Well, I think that the working in this field is it has a lot of heartbreak, but it is so fulfilling. Like when, even when I started, way back when, and when I say like my very first adult career, working with children who were experiencing foster care, it is sad and it's heartbreaking, but when those cases go right and they're reunified or they're adopted, it's just there's no other feeling than going to like adoption month and watching all of these kids be adopted, or going to a court hearing and seeing the relief on bio parents' face when the case finally closes and they've received all these services and all this help, and they're finally feeling good about the trajectory of where their life and their family is going. There's nothing greater. I
Yeah.
just, it just makes your heart happy. And I just,
You did your job. You did your
yeah,
job.
yeah.
No
Well, and
matter,
we,
yeah, no
we
matter
did
what the
it.
permanency becomes, whether it's adoption or reunification, you truly have to feel that you had such a huge part of that. Listen, everybody, I say this before, I've said this, Anthem has been on my podcast every year. They will continue to be on the podcast for every year, because these are the kind of conversations we want to have. These conversations are truly what educates everyone. I have people who have met me who have said they never even thought about kids in foster care. I have people who've met me who didn't even realize that, you know what, it takes more than just a social worker to make sure that our children feel that they are wanted and that they are going to succeed, because I believe in them. And I know, Aimee, I can just tell in your voice you do as well. And I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you because to me, you truly are one of those angels on earth. Because when so many people have turned their backs, these are the most vulnerable kids. And I tell people all the time, these kids are also our future. They're also our future. So we need to do everything. Listen, everybody, each and every one of us have an opportunity to do. I say it all the time. The world spins around every single day because of doers like Aimee, because of doers like companies like Anthem. So do me a favor. Figure out in the next 10 days, what exactly are you going to do? Maybe donate, maybe go mentor, maybe for the first time, really trying to figure out maybe being a foster parent actually might be something I'd like to do. Listen, until next time, this has been another amazing episode of Fostering Change. Everybody have a great day.